Okay, let's have our moment of reflection, please. Okay, we can proceed now with the meeting, and I'll open the meeting with our Indigenous acknowledgement statement. Again, we would like to begin this meeting by recognizing the First Nations, the Métis, and Inuit peoples of Canada as the traditional stewards of the land. The municipality is located within the boundary of Treaty 18 region of 1818, and this is the traditional land of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Wyandot peoples. Now, I don't think we have to talk about teleconference procedures. I think we're okay there. Hi, Gary.
Hello.
The first item is item B, the approval of the agenda. Does you've all read the agenda sent to you. Are there any additions that anyone would like to bring forward? Hearing none, can I have someone to move that the agenda of October the 21st, 2021 be approved or circulated?
I see Joanne's hand.
Joanne, yes, and seconder Rob, all in favor? That's carried. Does any going on B2? Does anyone have any pecuniary interest in this particular meeting? Hearing none, we'll move on. Item C, it's getting smaller. We have, it seems to be we have 4 reports to receive, if I may. The action plan 2021 for October, as of October, 21-27, the CEO service update, 21-28, the review of the system for the library and political elections, and governance 21-17, strategic planning working group update. May I have someone move that we receive these 4 reports as information? Gary, a seconder. Joanne, all in favor? Carried. Okay, moving on. You've all received the minutes of the September 16th meeting, the previous meeting. Are there any errors or omissions? Hearing none, can I have someone move that this board approve circulated the minutes of September 16th, 2021 board meeting? Someone to move it? Laurie, seconder. Jesse, all in favor? That's carried. I do not believe we have any business arising from those minutes. Thank you, Sabrina. Okay, we have no deputations, none scheduled. Sorry, were you saying something?
None scheduled.
Thank you. And we have no public, as far as I can see, coming in here. Now, correspondence. Sabrina, can you just speak to that, please?
So we have one item that came through. It was a letter that I thought the board would like to take a look at from Stella, just letting us know that she was quite impressed with our Journey of Knowledge, which is the Indigenous History Biblio board that we have. We had a master's level student from OISE, University of Toronto, who had been working on that as part of her degree under Andrea Wilson, our curator. So that went up about a year ago and, added along the way as we continue going. But she thought that it was a fantastic program was really happy with the activity that the library and museum have been doing on TRC, specifically the 94 calls to action. And I thought that it would be a nice thing for the board to be able to take a look at.
Thank you. Any comments, questions of Sabrina? Okay, thank you. We'll just move on, if I may. Section F. And this is where I hand over to
Just receiving that as information.
Oh, yeah. Okay, whatever. Yeah, you're right. I forgot that part. I missed it. All right, as I said, moving on. Sabrina, back to you again. We're talking now about the action plan for 2021, an update on it, if you may.
So our action plan, again, report is provided. We are currently, as of mid-October, at just over 70% successful. We do expect to be able to achieve nearly everything on the plan by the end of the year. Many of those pieces are ongoing that we actually count when we get into December. Statistics wise, you can see that we have completed most of our communication goals. We have surpassed our Instagram, which was brand new. We have just hit our Facebook on the money, 1,500 followers on that. We have just passed our Twitter numbers, and we are nearing our e-newsletter numbers. Beyond that, we have completed quite a number of pieces in the past month. We jumped from about 50% up to 70% with many of the pieces being completed this month. I'm not sure if there's any questions that anyone has. I can answer specific questions if you have any.
Are there any questions of Sabrina?
I have a couple more.
Yeah, go ahead.
C 2.4 is about doing presentations quarterly to committee of the whole. And there isn't anything under status there, so I'm just I would be C 2.4, so near the top.
Oh,
sorry.
sorry.
Yeah. There we go. Top. Provide quarterly updates to council.
So I will put in an update on that one. There were 2 that were made over the year so far. And we will be coming back to council probably in the next month. So we might not make the quarterly, but we'll make the 3.
Okay. And then my other question has to do with C 4.2, and that's the return on investment. And I know that we were waiting on OLS to complete or update their template. And I'm just wondering if you have any news on their timing on that.
I don't. I will follow up with that. And if not, we're just going to do it ourselves.
Yeah,
Okay.
we talked about that.
Yeah.
Okay, Laurie.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, and anyone else, any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you, Sabrina. Now, we'll move on to F2. And I'd like to just, you got the last minute add-on about the strategic planning group update at 2.2. Are you with me? I'm going to, let's talk about that one first, if I may. And Laurie, would you speak to that? I think that's your, if I might be wrong on this, is this your area of expertise, or Sabrina, or both?
Well, I'm the board member on the committee.
Yes.
But I would really say that most of the work is, of course, being done by staff. But I'm not sure that there's too much new in here from our last stage. I know we wound up the phase 1.
Yeah.
We're well into the focus groups, and I don't know if everybody, you've got a board member at every one of them, but I know there's pretty good coverage. Sabrina, is there any meeting that you're missing where you still need somebody from the board?
We're not missing any from the board. We do have some lower, non-registration for our rural program that is coming up next Thursday. So the board could potentially make note to that of people that you know that are in our rural communities. We will be canceling that program on early Wednesday if we don't have anybody registered just because we have to pay for the rental.
Oh, yeah, okay, gotcha.
Okay.
I mean, we don't mind just sitting here hoping someone shows up if it's at Ellie Shore, but since it is at Ravenna and we have to pay for the rental for that, we'll make the decision on Wednesday if we don't have any registration.
That's quite the shame, eh? Because we often hear about the need for, how to provide services into the rural area, and that's their opportunity to talk to us about it.
Yes.
Is there any other way to get the word out? I mean, I know you just asked us to talk to people, but.
I mean, it's been in the paper, it's been in the review, it's been e-blasted, it's on social media, it's been in our e-newsletter. Certainly the word is out. If it is a case where there are people from the rural community who want to speak, but the day and the time doesn't work, they can certainly contact us. We had some people from the parents focus group who said, just can't do that day and time, but want to have a conversation with you. So we set some other times for people to come in and have a chat with me. So it certainly isn't the only opportunity if it doesn't work for people. But at this point, it does read as if people have asked us to provide rural services. We then said this was where we would come in and say such as, and if we don't hear from the community telling us what it is they want, where they want it, how they want it, and when they want it, we have to assume that there is no need.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a message of some kind, or just a sort of not ongoing? I don't mean that. Just a lack of interest, perhaps.
I hope that, we did have people tell us when we were at the market and when we were doing our mailbox programs and our other phase one that they wanted to see rural services. They wanted to see activities that were happening in, spaces that are already in rural communities. So now it's just a case of needing to know, hear back on specifically what they want. So I'm hoping that it's just an issue with a day and time, and people will reach out to us and give us some feedback, even if it's just by email. Doesn't have to be an actual focus group. If we're just hearing back from people, letting us know what it is they would like to see, then at least we can start a dialogue with them. But again, until we hear, we do have to assume that there is no interest. So I'm hoping we'll hear something.
Okay.
But Wednesday morning we'll be making that decision, probably about 11:30, so that we can let the town know if we're not using the facility.
I was wondering about the apathy part of it, because I sat in with Sabrina last Saturday. We had a nice chat for an hour and a half, whatever it was. And then I went home, and there was nobody there on a nice Saturday. Didn't bother me. It wasn't. I'm not complaining in that way. It's just the fact that nobody turned up.
Yep, CEO and board drop-in is just that. It's a drop-in. It's not really a focus group. You're not registered, so we don't know who's going to come. And if no one comes, like you said, Morris and I had a nice chat. We had an opportunity to catch up.
Yeah, that's about all.
Okay. These, Sabrina, the stats on page 2 of the report, are any of the, I think I sent you information on 5 different places I chatted with people sort of in the community conversations. I'm wondering if you're picking any of those up in these stats at all. Any stuff coming from the board?
I'm sorry, I was trying to get it open and I lost you there. You were saying?
There's any stats in here from board conversations with people?
At this point, I have only heard from 2. So if there's any board members who are having conversations on any of the topics, whether it's, you doing sort of a bigger meeting with somebody and having a longer conversation, or even just sort of that listening stage, getting a little bit of, information you wanted to bring back, we would be including those in. So just from the people that we've heard from, but we definitely want to have as many points of contact as we can.
Okay. I did do a 5-minute presentation at my Pretty River Probus, but it's based in Collingwood, so I knew there wouldn't be a ton of Blue Mountains people, though I know the other opinions would be probably fairly similar. In any case, I wasn't asking them to comment to me at the time. I was really just telling them about the focus groups and the opportunity to participate. So of course I have no way of knowing whether that did anything, whether people showed up or not. But I did do that. And I know, Morris, you had some eventual success in chatting with a Probus group in your area. Have you had that meeting yet?
Not chatting. No. She would only allow, they only permit a request or an information thing that if you have some ideas for us, I told she indicated, when I say she, it's the president of the Probus, she told people, all the members, where to go. And that reached, how many, Joanne, 600 members?
Or as many as were reading their newsletter. Yes.
Yeah.
I think about, just under 600 now at this time.
Whatever, yeah. But the thing is, I finally convinced the president there that it was not political, non-sectarian, and she had to agree. And through the newsletter, we reached people. Now, whether it did any good, I can't tell. Picks up on what you said, Laurie. People might have come to meet the CEO meeting or whatever, and maybe they were Probus members, or maybe they came from Probus. We don't know.
I just don't know. Yeah, same problem. But anyway, at least we managed to get the information out there, and it through another forum. So that's something.
Yeah.
And not just that, you see it at one place and you choose to come, but the more places that it's seen, the more opportunities a person has to actually think about it. That they might have simply visited our website and just tried to find out what was going on. It might have driven somebody to answer the micro surveys. Not everybody is going to come face to face. We know the amount of focus group participants that you have are going to be much smaller than things that are not as much of a destination. So if they're coming here already, they'll participate in the Post-it note activity, whether you're at CHD or LE Shore, it'll be the same information there. From the ease of your home, you might read the Facebook page or the website on the various things that we're doing, or you might do a few of the micro surveys, give 15 minutes and do 3 of them. So not everyone is going to sign up for these face-to-face focus groups. Some people are also just sending emails. I'd like you to think of. We've gotten a few of those. So, I think the more places that people see it, the more opportunities they have to communicate. And I don't know that it's going to drum up all focus group members. Those always tend to be the real keeners who really want to have something heard and said. So, we take it in all different forms as it comes in.
And speaking of focus groups, I participated in the one on seniors. And I think we were 11 people in all, 3 of whom were, Sabrina, Mary, and I. But it was really interesting. And boy, talk about a loquacious group. I mean, someone had to take a breath and someone else would jump in. And so I kept on going really quickly for about an hour and a half. I've never seen a focus group where you didn't have to prod a little bit or ask more questions to get them going. It was like, whoop, whoop, whoop. So it was fun. It was interesting. I don't know if there's any comments from that you want to share, Sabrina, or any of the other focus groups, but I did find it was a great hour and a half.
Some things that we expected to hear and other things that you didn't expect to hear. So, I think that the focus groups are doing just that. They're going to reinforce some of the pieces that we know we need. It really gave us an understanding of where people's appetites were on how fast they want to come back into a public setting to start doing programs and activities. And that's one of our big questions right now. How long do we continue with virtual? How long do we do more of a hybrid? Do people want to be together? And then other things that were jumping off points that were, you know, either new services that they're looking for or a build on of a service. You know, a lot of desire to have things that we used to have that we don't have now, but understanding that there's limitations on how we do that. So I think it was a very good focus group on not just for the senior services that are required and requested, but as a temperature of the community.
Is it possible that most of the people in the community are in fact happy with what has transpired and gone on through this last year, whatever it might be? And
We have received many emails, face-to-face thank yous from people who have said, you know, the services have been consistent. The services for some people have been really lifesavers, you know, keeping them sane. But everybody has been very happy with the way that the services have happened. The few complaints that we've had have been from a few people on mask bylaws and then passport. And again, that's out of our hands. We will follow what our health unit, our municipality, our province tells us that we should be doing, you know, and some, you know, common sense safeties. But, you know, the majority of people have been really happy with the way we've provided services.
What I was thinking of was, excuse me, Laurie, I've got to take this phone call.
Okay. So we don't know what Morris was thinking, so we'll come back to that. The other comment I was going to make is we were each to organize a meeting, a get acquainted community conversation with the town council member. And I'm wondering how people are doing. I've got one set up with Rob Sampson, and we're meeting November 4th. So that was great, very easy to do. I just emailed him and explained what I was emailing about and who I was, you know, on the board. And he said, happy to meet with you, send me a meeting request, which of course meant I had to figure out how to do the meeting request. But yeah, so that's fine. So we're meeting, we have an hour set up on November 4th. And actually I did also, beg your pardon?
Sorry, Laurie, who was that you're talking about?
Rob Sampson.
Oh, yes, okay.
So it's, yeah, the meetings with the counselors. What else was I going to say?
I will admit, Laurie, that I have dropped the ball on that one myself. So I will be reaching out to all of our board members in the week and assisting with that connection for you.
Well,
Just by the way, what I did is I looked up, you go on to the website into the counselor name, they list all the committees they're on. So I could see when he was busy and when not to ask. And then I found there are dates that would work. And I threw out a couple of dates when I first emailed him. I don't know if I'm still on the chair, but Joanne, I see your hand up.
Yes, I was going to say, I had assumed that I was going to meet informally and coincidentally at Ravenna next week with the rural meeting that was going to be attended by my person. But now that may be in jeopardy, and come Wednesday, may have to make other plans.
Okay.
Laurie, maybe you'd fill the other members of the board in on my meeting with the mayor.
So yeah, oh boy, I wrote some
Funny by
notes.
memory, that's all.
Yeah.
I don't mean
we
the
had a
details.
meeting. This was October 6th when we had our regular meeting with our deputy and mayor and Morris and I and Sabrina and Sean and gosh, Morris.
Well, let me take you off it.
Thank you.
Let me got you off the hook. I used the opportunity to talk to the mayor. And I explained why, and I asked him to take off his mayor or councillor hat. And I asked him what sort of things would he like us to concentrate on. And I must say 95% of what I got, if not 98%, was, shall I say, political. It didn't tell me anything. So I will not be phoning the mayor to set up a meeting to hear the same thing again. I'm sorry, Rob, you have to hear that, but
I think though that the items that were mentioned in that meeting are the hot issues for many of our community members. So I don't know that they were political as much as
I think so.
the topics that are the focus for him at this point, that he thinks are pieces that we should be looking at, and is interested in how the library will fit into those. The other thing that I thought was an interesting piece that came out of that, which we've heard from many people, is you do really good work. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And that would be, and not just from that quick conversation, but we've heard that from others, that so many organizations will create a strategic plan and they want to reinvent themselves. And the process of reinventing themselves, they forget what they do well and they kind of throw everything out to make this new thing. And that is, we've heard that from many people, and I completely agree. We have key areas that we do well. We're always looking to see if we can do better, but you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater just because you have a new strat plan. So I think that was a piece that we've heard from many people in the community that was mentioned in that quick conversation that you had as well.
Question.
all right, Jesse, I see Jesse's hand up. Yeah, Jesse.
Morris, I was just wondering whether you think that let me put it this way, the unsatisfactory response that you got from the mayor was that because he was taken by surprise by your inquiry.
It is possible, but he is the mayor and he gets that all the time. And I wasn't asking for him to come up with any rocket science. I just said, what would you like to see us do? What would you like to see in our strategic plan?
I don't think that he was taken aback at all by it, because I
He's the mayor.
think that he went a good 5 or 7 minutes with just many things that we're good at, that we do well, areas that we're connected in, areas that we participate, areas that we support the town. It may have had more of the partnership pieces, but that's a huge piece of what we do. So I don't think it was a case where that anybody had to think about what they were going to say. It seemed to roll right off of his tongue on some of the things that he was looking for us to be involved in. The CAO jumped in as well on that conversation, and
Yes.
our council rep, Rob Potter, who was in the meeting as well as the deputy mayor, had some pieces that fit in. So even though it was sort of your opportunity to talk with Alar specifically, there were other members of the senior team that were present that I thought it was a very good conversation on some key areas that were good to hear what people had to say.
Well, let me ask both you and Lori a question then. And I'll tell you my answer afterwards. What did you write down as suggestions or whatever coming from the mayor? And I wrote down nothing.
Oh, I have about 6 pages of notes. No, we had a huge piece that came off of that. Many pieces that came out of that meeting.
Now, I have about 4 pages of notes as well, but
You're trying to tell me you're trying to tell me I'm wrong. In a
you know
nice
what,
way.
I'm so torn here. We were meeting formally as the board, talking to the mayor and the deputy.
Yes.
And that's very different from what we're trying to do with the community conversations.
Mhm.
So I would say to Morrissey, you haven't had a community conversation yet with Alar. We had a board to town discussion that, there were some things I thought were interesting that I did jot down specifically from the mayor. And one was he thought the board was in the last 4 or 5 years have been very good directions from the board and the work that we're doing on the strat plan. He's very impressed with. He mentioned something that I had encountered as well is there's some low awareness of the library, particularly among new residents. And there's, and the topic of signage came up, and the fact that unless you know the library is down Bruce Street, you wouldn't know the library is down Bruce Street from seeing any signs to it. So I think there are, I could go through a whole series of pages of this, but it was a wide-ranging conversation. But it was a conversation between the board and the town. It wasn't a casual conversation with an individual who also happens to be the mayor about the directions, in his interests in town, his priorities for the library as an individual, as opposed to a person holding an office.
Right. There was a lot on the cultural component as well that was brought up in that conversation. And these were all prompted when you asked, the question that you would ask in sort of the more informal one, but about how, whether or not the new community members know what the history is of this region. And that's something that we're winning awards for. And now it's a case of how do we get that out to more people, which comes back to one of the pieces that has come up several times in our consultation, which is how do we partner to have a new resident package, something I know the town has looked at in the past. We've tried to find out how to get a new resident package to our community members. And that could be a place that we actually provide some of that history of, Champlain was here, and who were the First Nation communities that were here, and what is the history of, Blue Mountains? Why is it called Blue Mountains? The various things that we have spent our real history films on as well. So I think it was a good conversation, and I took a lot from it, both on the signage, the physical, the promotion, the marketing, that we're doing better than most out there was one of the things he said, as well as the various cultural and embracing community. And that was one of the comments, is that, this is what makes community. And if we don't have that knowledge, all of us at a common level, you start to lose community. We don't want to just be residents. We want to be a community.
If I could jump in too, I think you have to bear in mind that we are getting feedback from across a whole spectrum of the community on a whole spectrum of different issues. And so our outlook is much, 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 much broader than just the library and the glam. We go back to the last election campaign. So if you want to say, well, it's political, well, yes, it is political, because we are elected, and we are elected based on our listening to the public during the last election campaign and responding to what they told us. So what we're trying to do is follow what we promised. We said we would improve communications, and we're trying to do that. We said we would clean up what was still perceived by many people at the time as some serious problems at the library. Well, in our view, the library is doing much better now, and why mess with that? If the library board we have is doing a great job, we don't need to interfere in that. And that goes with everything. We said to the public, this is what we're running on. This is what we have in mind to do. We don't function as a solid group. We aren't a party. We function as individuals. But we do work collaboratively, and these are the things that we recognize that the public want us to work together on. And there are several more. Rural broadband is one of them, and we heard about them during the campaign. We hear about them all the time since. So what you see as politics, we see as the marching orders that we got from the public at the very beginning. And that's what we've been following all along. So when we measured the library against those measures, then that to us is the logical way for us to respond to the public.
And I didn't hear anything new in terms of possibilities for the library strategic plan. Maybe there is nothing new. Maybe the library generally is doing a good job, and nobody, the leaders of the community maybe don't need to give the library any direction.
Well, I think we don't see our role that way. I think the library board is a separate entity,
Yeah.
and we try not to interfere.
But then as an individual, as a person without your hat on.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you're asking
No,
me.
I'm sorry. I was really referring to my asking Allard to take his political hat off, his mayor's hat off, the mayor's chain off, whatever he takes off.
I'll be honest, Morris. I think that was really perhaps you need to go back to what we originally discussed with these, which would be a one-on-one conversation. The mayor has to speak for council, and so he can't just go off on his own tangent. None of us can. We all have to speak for council. So I think that he probably didn't understand that that's what you were asking for. We were in a meeting that is a meeting of the library board and the leaders of council and staff. We look at that as having somewhat a formal connotation to it, and to ask him to just become a private citizen in the middle of that, I don't think he really understood that that's what you were looking for. In fact, from his answer, I think he was giving you what we have discussed at council, what he's heard back as feedback from council, and probably what he's heard as feedback from citizens as well.
Mhm.
I agree. I think that if it was a one-on-one over coffee, like we had discussed, you might get some other pieces of interest areas that come out of it. And you may get nothing different, and that's okay too, because the whole point of even a focus group, we hear all of the comments and then they come back, and that's how we synthesize them to sort of get the temperature of our community. There's never anything new, and there's always new. We have to be really aware that the way it comes to the group who's then going to operationalize this is how we're going to find new ways of doing the same type of service and double down on the areas that people say, you are doing fantastic there, don't change anything. So all information that comes back to us is relevant at this point, because it will help us to figure out where we go next.
Anyway, that was the end of my report on the strat planning process, unless there's other questions. Or Sabrina has something more to add.
Taking ahead? No. All right. Thank you, Laurie. Coming back to item number F 2.1, board meeting locations for the balance of this year, 2021, and then for all of 2022. Sabrina, would you like to just mention why you put that in there?
Yep. So we are able to have face-to-face meetings again. It just depends on what the appetite is of this group. If you would like to have face-to-face meetings, I know it's hard to have bigger conversations that the board used to have around the table when you're in a Zoom meeting. This method is working fine. It's just a case of, do you want to be back together, or do you want to continue doing Zoom for the rest of this year, which is only November? And then what are we doing in 22?
Question, any thoughts?
My first question would be, where would we meet? Would we be socially distanced and that sort of thing? I am now triple vaccinated, I'm happy to say, because I am immunocompromised, but I would want to make sure that we're taking at least the basic precautions.
Protocols, yeah.
Right, the boardroom, we cannot physically distance in the boardroom, but we can use the gallery where we can physically distance in the gallery. We could also have it open to the public. Same thing, they would have to show passports because it's actual an event if they wanted to participate, and still could be physically distanced. Not that we have many people banging at our doors to come to a board meeting, but it is a possibility. What we don't have the ability to do well is do a hybrid, where one or two people choose to stay at home and the others choose to come in. So it does need to be a consensus of what the group wants to do.
Yeah. Joanne, you had your hand up, Joanne.
Yes. Could we stay this way for our last meeting of this year, November, and then move into face-to-face meetings in January? Does that sound reasonable? That will.
Certainly a question.
I was thinking that if God forbid anything horrid should happen over the Christmas meeting times, but I would hope that doesn't, and would still give us time to switch around in January. But as Sabrina said, this worked very well, but we're missing the human component.
Let's keep that one in the back of our mind. Jesse, you had something that you wanted to say?
Yeah, no disrespect to Joanna, but I myself believe that we should continue with the type of meeting we're having now, a virtual meeting, in other words, until everyone has had a booster shot. I don't want to commit to going back to face-to-face meetings, even in the gallery, come January, because I don't know what's going to happen between now and then. So I think we should take it one meeting at a time.
Certainly, and even if we choose that we are going to do this at any point, you know, if there's a bump up in numbers, whether it's provincial, locally, our health unit, we can always just change the meeting date to be a Zoom meeting again. So I'm whatever we choose to do, we are still in the pandemic and it has to be very flexible.
Okay. Laurie, Gary, Rob, have you any thoughts? Gary?
Just a comment. I'd be pleased to come back at any point, but I understand, you know, all of us really to agree. So, you know, January doesn't work. I hope in terms of the plan, the strat plan, you know, maybe we can try to think in terms of April. Maybe it's important to have more a face-to-face, the same restrictions where we're at.
Okay.
Boardroom,
Rob?
gallery, and all the implications of staff and all of that. It would be nice to get back together. Timing is right, and it doesn't quite seem right yet. January probably won't work. I'm really hoping.
Laurie?
What I find interesting is the number of people that participate in our meetings through watching it on Facebook and on YouTube. The stats for September for those two are 54 through Facebook, which I guess is watching us live, and 16 YouTube watching it as a recording later. That's way more participation than we get at our in-person meetings. So my thinking isn't just in terms of the COVID and the risk, is the ability for the community to see some of the discussion. And it brings me to the question of what would it take to make it possible to record meetings in the gallery?
We are looking at that now because we are struggling with the numbers for our programs. So our programs, we might only be able to fit 20 people in the gallery, physically distanced and safe. But our YouTube might only get 5 or 10 people who watch it live, but then 1,000 people later who watch it. So we're trying to work right now to be able to have face-to-face meetings that can be broadcast live. And we are working on that. It still would be using Zoom. We have to do a bit of infrastructure add-ons for additional cameras and some additional microphones. But I think that we'll be able to do that possibly in January, definitely by February or March.
Rob,
So if that's the case, we could be, when people are comfortable with that, of course, we could be in the gallery. Currently, we don't have enough microphones for each person. So we would need to have, each person actually having a microphone so that it can be connected through Zoom so that when we're being recorded and it's being broadcast out on Zoom to go to Facebook Live or wherever, sound is being picked up. That's sort of our one issue right now because we don't have a system like council does.
Joanne?
A question, and I know we can't predict the future. I'm thinking of wearing masks and having a microphone. I don't know how does that work. What council do?
Council is not meeting face to face. If we are physically distanced at the 2 meters, just like a presenter can take off their mask at that point to be able to talk. But I'm not having too many problems with, people who are choosing to keep masks on being able to hear. And once we have sort of our microphone set up in our system, we'll start doing some testing. We just haven't gotten that far with trying to figure this out, but we are not, our presenters who are presenting live are not wearing masks.
Thank you.
Rob, you have something to say?
Yeah, we had our first county council meeting last week back in the council chambers. We had perspex screens on either side of us. We wore our masks except when we were going to speak. And they have very long microphones that sort of come up right in front of us. So it seemed to work all right. The worst thing is when everybody's moving around at the same time and you get into close proximity, it's very hard to squeeze through some of the tighter spaces there. But other than that, it seemed to work out all right. But town council, the plan is to go back to in-person meetings next month. So I'm not sure whether we're going to be using perspex screens or whether the desk will be socially distanced or just how they're going to do that physically. But so there are a couple of possibilities to do that safely, but it still also takes a little bit of individual effort to avoid getting into other people's space and everybody has to be responsible for protecting themselves and each other.
Thank you, Rob. What we're doing here is we're looking for consensus. I don't think we need a vote in this as such. I think consensus will work. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm ambivalent. Really, I can carry on. We can carry on with the Zoom meetings, or I suppose I'll lean towards getting back together where I can read well, from the chair, if you like, I can maybe get a little better feel of what people are thinking. So it's the feeling I'm getting is, am I right in saying that you'd like us to get back in, but you're willing to wait? Maybe have the November meeting as virtual like this, and look at, we can always make a decision last minute, can't we, Sabrina? Pretty well.
Certainly, we don't have to make a decision for all of 22, and I think flexibility, as we've learned in the past year and a half, is key to success.
Yeah.
So if we assume that we will finish up 2021 the way we're doing, I will let everybody know in January or before when we have worked out the technology that we would need anyways. I certainly hear Lori's comment that it's not just a preference of where do we want to be, but since we are being so successful with members of the community watching our board meetings, that is a key factor for us to consider as well.
Okay, well, let's leave it then, that we'll have everyone happy with having the last meeting for this year in November as a virtual meeting, and play it day by day sort of thing come January. Okay.
Yes.
Nice
Yes.
response from everybody. Thank you. Now, while we're on that particular subject, I wanted to remind everyone that our November meeting is the last meeting of this board. Yes, it is. Yes, the last meeting of this executive anyway. And I wanted to say that I will not be a candidate for chair in 2022. I'd like to leave that with you because I think it's time perhaps for a change of the guard. Leaving that. Any comments?
So there's another, am I right that this board has another year to go in its term?
That's correct, yes. 2022, yes. But the board.
Every November we do our elections, so we'll be putting the elections for chair and vice chair forward at the end of the November meeting.
Okay. All right.
Okay, well, we have to decide how we're going to change your mind, Morris.
Yes.
I will say it again. I will not be a candidate for chair in 2022.
Is that like a Sherman-esque pronouncement? If nominated, I will not run. If elected, I will not serve.
Let's move on, shall we?
I think though that we should not let that pass without a big thank you for dealing with what can sometimes be a difficult task. So I've been there, done that, and I appreciate how well you handle it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Morris.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to F3, if you're looking at your agenda. Serena, I have to come back to you again.
Certainly. I have this on here because in 2018, we did our first open house information session for anybody who is potentially considering being a board member. Certainly, if we do this, it's not going to happen until October or November of 22. It's not happening this year. But I just wanted to find out what our board would like to do in the recruitment process, in the supporting of council, and in the information session type pieces. Because if the board would like to do the same types of things, I'll have to make a report to council and let them know that we're offering that service. It is their role to recruit and select. In 2018, what we did is we found that many people apply for a board not understanding what the role of governance and what the role of a board member is. Especially with library boards, people join because, you know, they want to pick books, they want to run a program, they don't really understand what governance is. So we went through and said, this is what a board does. This is our strategic plan. These are the types of characteristics that we're looking for on our board, not people, but ideas of what you should come with. How much time it is. I mean, we've all heard those lies when you want to join a board that it's 3 hours a month. We all know that it's not. I sit on many boards myself. I understand that. So really just trying to let people go in with their eyes open. That was very successful. It was a snowstorm, and I still think we had a pretty full house on that particular meeting. We did the ACC and the board at that. Additionally, we offered to council to do interviews where we made recommendations to council on who had applied and sort of a ranking of if they would meet some of the needs of the board. And then council takes those in chambers and completes their process, but it was just one more bit of information for them. So if it is something that we want to do these types of things, again, I'll have to let council know that we're offering because it's theirs to do. And if they say yes, then we can begin to plan.
Joanne?
That's how I learned about the board. I attended that first meeting, and speaking personally, it was convincing. I don't know how much work is involved from the board and from your staff, Sabrina, through Morris. So I don't want to call on you know, a lot of work, but it was effective for me.
I see it personally, Mr. Chair, I see it personally as it's significantly less work to let people know what they're in for before they become a board member than running multiple orientations for board members month after month as new members come and go.
Yes. Rob?
Thank you. I think it's a great idea. We sometimes struggle to get people to step forward. We had one that we just recently filled where it took 3 tries to get, and we finally got 2 people who responded. So it's not easy to find people who are willing to volunteer. So anything that you do to help people understand what's expected of them, I think is probably a very good idea.
I don't remember there's a lot of work, Sabrina.
Not at all, no. And I can't imagine, I mean, I'd have to look back at her PowerPoint and see if things need to be updated. Obviously, the strategic plan will have been updated, but the general information will be pretty much the same. We have plenty of time to plan it. It's just letting council know that it's an offer. So it seems to me like there's a bit of a consensus on doing the same types of supports for council to be able to bring in a strong board. So I will prepare that report and get that ready.
Is that something you prepare and then pass in front of us? Do you have to have it approved of some kind, or?
The last time we had a resolution that made the recommendation.
Yeah, okay, well, let's do it that way.
To
Yeah.
council. So I'll do the same thing, and then the recommendation with the report will go to council, and then council can determine what level of support they would like from from us as an organization.
Good. Everyone happy with that? Good. I see some people nodding. Okay, moving on, if I may. The item administration 21.28, the library and political elections. Everyone's read that, I hope. The question is, do we need any changes to it now? We have an election coming up next June, I think, and we want to be prepared and be seen to be prepared as well. I'll lead off the discussion. I read the thing, I think I had a hand in going over this initially, but anyway, I read it again and kind of again, and I can only come up with one small item that I would like to add. And if you could jump into Sabrina, this will start off the discussion because I do want to hear from the other members. Go to the second last paragraph, I guess, the 50.5. Okay, when a member of the board is running for office, they may continue to be a board member and continue their board responsibilities. Now, I'm suggesting a phrase, something like this, and it's bad English, but they may not utilize their position on the library board to further their political campaign in any way. In other words, and this is strictly a theoretical thing, Jesse wants to run for whatever, doesn't matter, council. And during this next 6 or 8 months, whatever it might be, as a candidate, he can stay on the board, but he can't stand up in front of people and say, look at me, all the good job I've done on the library board, and use that, utilizing that position on the board to further things. Something along those lines. I'm not sure of the words. Does anyone have any thoughts? I mean, tell me I'm wrong again.
So question
Of course.
on that point, Morris, that's a good point. Supposing the candidate is a member of the library board and simply as part of his brochure
Yes.
mentions that fact, does that offend you?
Well, that's what I'm sort of saying, that they should not do that.
Okay.
If I may
hearing
on that one, I think that if we're listing that they may not utilize board time to promote their campaign, that's different. But there's nothing stopping you from standing up and saying, I did a darn good job in a debate or something else. I mean, every aspect of your toolkit is going to be promoted when you are campaigning. What we don't want is them to use board time, board meeting space, library equipment. But we expect them to continue their role as the board member. We expect them not to walk away from the board. And frankly, anybody who quits their responsibilities in the board in the last few hours because they're running for election is not putting their best foot forward in the election process. We do expect that they're going to continue in their role, but we don't want them to use the board function, the board time, or the board meetings.
Jesse, you had something? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Morris, I understand what you're saying, and I'm not disagreeing with you. By the way, let me make it clear, there is no circumstance whereby I will be a candidate in the next election.
Right.
It will never happen. But that said, I'm not sure that it would make any difference, for example, if I were a candidate, to be able to say, well, you know, I served on this particular, I was a Rotary Club member for the last 30 years. And I was a member of the Blue Mountain Library Board for the last 3 years. Would that be offensive? I'm not sure that that's the point you're making. I agree with what Sabrina said, that I should not be campaigning in a way which basically broadcasts the work that I'm doing on the library board. But simply to say I'm a member, which is a matter of public knowledge anyway, I don't find either improper or offensive.
Okay, yeah, fine. Joanne?
I'm thinking back to the last election. There were members of the public that felt that a political candidate was duty bound to quit the board, and felt it was improper that they did both. And there was no way of convincing the public that, no, that's totally correct. They can do both. You know, there's a different perception from the public, contrary to what Sabrina said, that it would be a case of a poor show if they did.
I had in the back of my mind something along, it's maybe not the right idea, but I had the words conflict of interest. You're a member of the board and you're running for council, and you say, I would vote for something that the council might be proposing or something, and that could have a beneficial effect on the library. I'm very unclear on this, but it's that idea I had there, and I couldn't for the life of me put it in words. So I just said, well,
There is
anyway.
no conflict of interest by being a member of a board and running for election, and that is by the integrity commissioner. So we don't have the right to go beyond that point. It's an understanding that anybody can hold any position while running for another position. You can't hold the position once you've been elected, but you're not elected until the next board cycle anyways. So we don't have issues with that. What we have with this is making sure that we are clarifying, and this policy, Joanne is right, was well pulled by the community, because the question was, should you not be resigning? And we had issues where one wanted to resign and one didn't want to resign, and it became an issue on both ends because of that. Our policy is clear. You do not need to resign, and in fact, we expect you to continue and fill out your role as a board member. Where we have limitations is how you can be privileged. So nobody can be privileged as a result of being a board member, but you can rent the gallery if you want to do meet the candidate, just like anybody else can. You can pay us to make photocopies, just like anybody else can. As a board member, you don't get free photocopies, but you don't get that as a board member now either. So it really is just about clarifying that there is no privilege to any candidate, regardless if you are a staff running or a board member running.
So the consensus, I like that word, is that in fact, a board member who decides to run for council in this case, they can utilize their position in the board by just saying, I was on the board, or I am on the board, pardon me, and I'd like to move out to council. That's okay with what you're saying, Jesse?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. I raised the question, but I wasn't quite sure of what I was saying. I mean, Rob, do you have something waving your hand there?
Yeah, it's a good question, because it did come up in the last election campaign. But it's also governed by the Municipal Elections Act. And I don't have that right in front of me at the moment, but Karina, I'm sure, would be happy to check it. But our committee duties continue throughout the election period. So, and anyone that wants to can go to the town website and see what committees I'm on. And I'm actually quite happy to have them do that. Whether, I'm not sure that I would try to in any way take advantage of my service on any one committee or board during the election campaign, other than being able to answer questions about it, I suppose. But I think you'd have to be very careful about that. And that's, I think what you're getting at, Morris, at least in my take on it, is using it as some sort of advantage over others. And that's where you would have to be careful under the Elections Act anyway. And the Integrity Commissioner could step in at that point and say you're using that as an unfair advantage.
Okay.
So, if, for example, library board members were going out and running up and down the main street with campaign signs for one candidate over another, that would be unfairly using that position. That's an extreme example, but I just wanted to try to give some clarity. So it comes under the Municipal Elections Act. We don't get to decide it. And it has to be done with great care. The other point I wanted to make was to make sure, I know that there was some lack of clarity in the last campaign among candidates about whether they could use the library facility or not. So I wondered if some sort of fact sheet, FAQ or something like that could be prepared and handed out to the candidates. There usually is some sort of pre-election meeting where that could be given to the candidates to make clear to them basically what's in this information here, how they can use the library, etc.
Okay, thanks, Rob.
To make sure they all know about it.
I brought up the question. It was my question after studying this this document that's there. Does anyone else have any other maybe additions, corrections, or suggestions about this particular document? Or is it in fact okay as it is?
So I did make a few changes on that section, and then I believe that Rob was pointing out something that was already in there about Section 30 of the Municipal Act, which it's in here. There's also in this policy, the section about being able to use our resources and property. Any candidate, political parties, I know that's not a municipal election, but it is for the provincial and federal. That's not just municipal, this policy, it's all elections. They have the right to rent out our spaces and do a program. We rent to everybody. We will take everybody's money. So there's no issues with that. The election signs and pieces like that are pretty standard across the municipality on any public sites. But I did make a few changes to try to clarify this one section. So they may not be privileged. So when a member of the board is running for office, they may not be privileged and receive additional supports or services not available to any candidate. They may not utilize board meeting time to promote their campaign. They are expected to continue as a board member and fill their obligations throughout the term, and they are expected to continue their board responsibilities, including committee work. And I think the last two may help with people who, last time we had may, and it was permissive, and it became very political that may was neither a shall or a no, that it was deemed to be an ethical question. So this now says no, the expectation by the board and council when they appointed you is that you actually are going to complete your term.
Okay, that changes the picture a little bit, because now those changes, once you've had a moment to digest them, they actually require a board approval, don't they?
Yes, this is a board document.
A motion, et cetera, et cetera. Were you waving a hand, Jesse, or?
No.
No, okay. Anyone get any other? Well, we'll leave those for a moment, Sabrina. They're good. Maybe those then are perhaps an indirect result of my raising the question about board members, right? Well, doesn't matter. Anyone got any other comments or suggestions on this particular document?
Just on the first line that Sabrina typed in, it doesn't read very well, Sabrina.
Okay.
You say they may not be privileged and receive additional supports. What is it you're trying to say?
They may not be privileged to receive additional supports.
That'd be better.
Wouldn't it be, they may not be permitted to receive?
How about they shall not receive additional supports or services not available to any candidate?
Yes.
So they
Great.
shall not receive.
I agree with that wording.
Okay. That fair?
The only other change I would make is the number 3 is fulfill their obligation. So it's fulfill.
Thank you, Lori. Okay.
Uh,
So write the term, what term is that, Sabrina? Their
Term
term,
of the board.
yeah, the board term, yeah, 4-year term. Wait a
Well-
second now, hang on. How can they do that if they're elected? If they're elected in June,
They're not elected in June. The election closes on October 24th. And at that point, then there is a new council
yeah,
and you are now a member of council, but not during the candidate process.
but if they're elected in October, they cannot fulfill their term because they've got 1 more month to go.
So this is as candidate, not as board member. So they are expected to continue as a board member
Right,
throughout the
Election
election
campaign.
process. Campaign?
It's election, not election.
Thank you.
So I do have a technical question then. If someone is elected, when do they officially become the new council? And because the board completes its term until the members are replaced.
Yes. So from a municipality end, it's going to be October 24th. I mean, somebody could have run here for federal election and they could have been elected at that point, and then they have to resign because they are, if they've been elected, then they would be resigning. Or notifying council, and council would make the decision if they're accepting a federal, an MPP to be sitting on our board. I highly doubt that they would at that point. But only council can accept the resignation.
Question, Sabrina. When you have a preamble which reads, when a member of the board is running for office, what office are you talking about?
Any office,
Federal, provincial, municipal?
school board,
Dog catcher?
Elected office, I think you mean? Elected office?
it does say during a campaign periods for municipal, provincial and federal elections. Doesn't mention the dog catcher.
if that is part of your municipal or county elections. You could be running for school board, right? You could be running for trustee. And then it's a case of, unless council deems that it's a conflict, you are still a member of that board.
Do we know whether there's any statutory provisions which might affect that section?
The only statutory piece that affects it is if you are elected to council, municipal council. The Public Libraries Act states that you may not be an elected councillor or an employee of the municipality or library board and sit on the board outside of being the council representative.
Okay, follow-up question then. Does that then start on the moment that the individual has been declared as the winner of the election? Or does it start when they are initially sworn in as an elected member?
The swearing in is on October 24th, which would be at that point, yes.
So that
Oh,
terminates the person's term of office as a library board member.
It does, and council can make the decision at that point if they are going to have, so let's say Morris chooses that he is going to run for office. If Morris is a member of the board on October 24th, he then becomes an elected official for the municipality. The term is until the end of the year or until council appoints. They usually don't appoint a next board until January. They can say, Morris, please continue to sit there until the next board is appointed. That is a council decision.
So do we need to modify number 3 then? Because we're actually saying they're expected to fulfill their obligations throughout the term of the board, which would be past the point where Morris, in this example, just got elected.
So would you like me to put in there or until?
Oh, man.
I mean,
I'm just
only
wondering,
council removes people and adds people. We don't do that.
I'm just wondering if we should check with, because the clerk runs the elections and she's the expert on all this stuff, if we should talk to her. Because in fact, councillors are not councillors until they're sworn in, which takes place, and I was just trying to find the date. It's in November sometime. It's not on election night.
Right.
It is whenever the first meeting of the new council takes place and everybody is sworn in.
Then may I
And
suggest,
then, so I wonder if we should get some help from Karina, being the local elections official
That's
who deals
November.
with all this.
That is November 21st.
November 21st. Okay, it wasn't in my calendar yet, but
so that's the essence, Rob, is what you're saying. We table any discussion until.
Right, I do think that we're moving into crossing into council's purview by having anything about what council does. It's just a case of the library board expects you not to get privilege and to do your job. If you are
Yeah.
running. We're not talking about once a person is elected, because once you're elected, that is a very different situation. And the policy actually isn't about elected. The policy is about the election process. So it's all about the campaigning piece. It's about campaign contributions. It's about use of the resources and property during the campaign. So I really don't want to get into the pieces about once you're elected. This is only a policy about during the period between June, when people sort of pick up and start working. Nomination day is August 19th. That's when it closes. Election day is October 24th. And then the inaugural meeting, which is when the council actually sits for the first time, is November 21st. So this is bringing us from June, when people start talking, until November 21st at whatever time they sit for the first time.
And then to pick up on what you were saying, Rob, can we table this discussion and ask you to maybe informally discuss it with Karina and come back?
I can bring this to Karina if that's something you want.
Yeah, and bring the subject back again at our November meeting, this November coming.
Okay, but just so that we're keeping it clear that it's,
Okay. So we'll table that for a moment right now, okay? All right, moving on, if I may. I guess Laurie, are you sort of, you're sort of finished on the strategic plan items and discussion in any way?
Yes, I am. All done.
We'll move on back to you again, Sabrina. The service excellence that you're administering 21.27. Talk on that report.
certainly. So again, if there's any questions, certainly I can answer them. We have our statistics to date. You can see that we are still doing quite well with our statistics. We have quite a number of people who are using our facility pretty fully, as if they did before. Our students are this year back in and having our classroom visits, which are nice to see. We have made some changes to our building based on some of the early consultation that came in. Our gallery is hosting again full community shows. We're not holding receptions just because that's a little bit problematic. People would want to take off a mask to be able to, wine and cheese it. So we're not doing that. Our library services and museum services are continuing at the depot. We had a fantastic number of people who were present at the film just recently. We won several awards and continue to win awards for real history. The most recent one was actually about a month ago that it happened, but it happened after our our last report went out. So the Silver Telly Award was one that we received for our fossil program. We have a staff member who has been accepted on a scholarship to a UNESCO program at a university in Italy, in Venice. So she's actually doing that and in Italian, and that is going to be working directly back in with the types of things that we're doing with our various environmental programs, working with the conservation groups and things like that. So that's a great coup for us to be under a major training with UNESCO. 1,700 people watched the apple harvest film right in the first weekend. So it's continuing to grow as we're there. We're doing a showing, or we've offered a showing to one of the farms who their workers don't have access to internet, so they missed it and we're interested in seeing it. So we're trying right now to get a focus group with them that they'll come in and actually be able to watch the film as well, because they wanted to see that before they head home in the coming weeks. Our staff are doing well. We have a number of students who are with us and back and working regular hours again. We've talked already about our numbers, having hit many of our milestones at this point. And we have quite a number of programs that are coming up in the next month. All of those are linked there for people who would like to participate or register. And I think that's about it.
Thank you, Sabrina. Any questions of Sabrina on that report? Oh, okay. Thank you, Sabrina. We have received that report, and I think it's a good report for the public to read. Okay, moving on, if I may. No other business talking about there.
Do we want to accept the strategic plan discussions?
Well, that got me there when I read that. The use of the word receive. Well, we've already received it, yes. Would someone care to move that we accept the strategic plan discussions as information as presented by the CEO? Someone care to move that? Joanne or Rob, second. Thank you. All in favor? It's carried. There you go, Sabrina. Now, round table. A lot of stuff there, eh? Anyone want to mention, talk about any of those items or ask about them?
Joanne will be attending a board assembly meeting early next month. So that's the fall. So she'll be doing that.
Anything in particular you wish me to bring forward? I know they always have a tight agenda.
Anyone?
Okay.
You listen and learn, will you?
Yeah, it's so hard for me to listen, but I will.
Okay. All right. Let's. Could someone please move that this board receive as information the roundtable discussions? Someone to move it?
So moved.
Jesse, seconder, Rob, all in favor? Carried. Key messages, Sabrina. You have a few, I think.
All right, just pulling those up. So our key messages, I think there was only one of them that I had. We'll get what the views are currently at the time that I put it out. I'm not sure if there's any additions or changes that you would like added in there.
Anyone?
We may have some announcements coming up from a service excellence point in the week before it actually goes out.
Anything? Okay. Would someone care to move that that this board approve the release of the key messages as presented by Sabrina. Gary, a seconder? May I have a seconder, please? Jesse, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay. Item J, we are planning a closed meeting. Without further ado, I will make the motion that with regard to section 16.1.4 of the Public Libraries Act, I move that this board do now move into closed session in order to address matters pertaining to personal matters about an identifiable individual and labor relations. May I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Joanne. All in favor? Carried. We now move into closed session at whatever time it is. Okay, we're back to open session now. I don't do that very well, but it's a bit hard to do, actually. Okay, we have
And we just need to approve the resolutions and recommendations that were made in closed session.
we're now in open session now. Yeah, may I have someone move that this board approve all the resolutions and recommendations which were made in closed session?
I so move.
Jesse, thank you. And a seconder?
I'll second.
Gary, thank you. All in favor? Carried. Okay, moving on.
Oh, I'm sorry, I see that I did not change. The next meeting is not October 21st. We are here already.
It's
The
November
next
18th.
meeting is November 18th.
Thank you. All right, that's good. Anything else before I adjourn? No general discussion, no nothing? My goodness. All right, I have done my, you pick up the time, Sabrina. I move that this board now adjourn at 3:55 p.m. Due to the call of the chair. We are adjourned.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Morris.